2, 1. Welcome, everyone. This is the Metro Council Women's Caucus meeting on Tuesday, April 27th at 5 p.m. electronically. And I'm going to begin with the electronic meeting language pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 regarding electronic meetings as extended by Executive Orders 34, 51, 60, and 71. I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metro Council, and the meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Do I have a second?
So moved.
I hear a second from Vice Chair Stiles. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
or aye. All opposed? I'd like to say no. So in the form of roll call, I will say who I think is here, and that will also be our official vote count as well. So I see currently Councilmembers Sawara, Stiles, Van Reese, Bircher, Toombs, and Hancock voting in the affirmative on the electronic meetings order. Is there any correction to that? Seeing none. All right, we are meeting electronically for the last time. First item of business, will very quickly pull up the minutes. I'm going to go back and grab those, make sure I've got the latest and greatest. Let's see. Are those recent?
I'm not seeing the women caucus.
Okay,
minutes.
I will.
I was misspoke and said minority caucus, but I don't see the women caucus.
I have a copy of the minutes, and if I can share my screen, let's see if I can do that. I can share my screen. Let's see if this is the right one. There we are. Okay, I'm now showing you my notes, which are minutes of our previous meeting. I will give you all a minute to look over those. We had as our guest Chief Drake, who spoke on a number of issues: diversity, domestic violence, mental health, promotion, and good recruiting. We did review and adopt the bylaws, knowing that we still have work to do on those. We're still working on the mission statement. We did elect officers. Old business, we talked about our March resolutions and what to do for April. And we'll correct that misspelling on rollout. Next meeting is today. Any corrections to those minutes?
I think it would be appropriate to list who the officers were that were elected under 4.
That was Vice Chair. That was your official election, correct, Councilmember Stiles?
Correct.
Although you were serving in that capacity, and Secretary was officially
Aaron, Councilmember Evans, and then Councilmember Porterfield for treasurer.
Okay, thank you. Good suggestion. Okay.
And add the chair, please.
Yes, I guess I was officially elected at that point as well, or I think I had been, I don't know. All right. Guess I've been serving as acting chair. Okay, now we're all official and it's in the minutes, so that's good. Thank you for that suggestion. Other corrections? Seeing none, I will save these as the minutes corrected. As corrected, okay. I do not believe that we have a quorum, so we actually, well, let's see, will not vote on that at this point. Unless suddenly more
Chair
people
Allen, this is Angie Henderson. I just joined the meeting about a minute ago. I don't know if that helps with your quorum call, but just wanted to.
But I don't think it gets us over the hump.
We're one short.
We are one short. So let me see if I can get back to this. All right, great. All right, that being said, I'm going back to my minutes. So we will, if a quorum appears, we will come back and officially vote on it, but we've looked at it. Now I'm back to taking notes on today's meeting. Okay, so Henderson is here. Any other ones? Great. Our next item of business are our guests who we are grateful to have. Let's see.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Who just arrived?
Councilmember Sepulveda.
Excellent, okay. And Becky, do you mind reminding me of your last name while I'm typing?
Sure, it's Bullard, Bullard.
Great, okay. Great. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can focus on updates from, we'll begin with Becky Bullard since she is here, and hopefully Shannon will be joining us shortly. I know that she was looking for the link earlier, but I think both Rosie and I sent it to her. If we send her the right link, she should appear. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn the bully pulpit over to Becky. If you can just give us an update. I presume you've had a great briefing from Diane Lance about the concerns that this group issued back in the fall. Just because we get input from so many constituents and citizens, our viewpoint of the process for reporting and dealing with sexual harassment and sexual assault included hearing from a number of people who didn't necessarily understood how the system worked. So clearly y'all have worked very hard on putting together what you want to be a very thorough and robust system, and we hope that the dialogue with us communicated just where some gaps in how people knew how to access that. So if you can maybe give us just kind of some update on how things work now, but with particular emphasis maybe on if any changes that you are aware of were made as a result of that conversation. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'll relay the information that I've been given as I wasn't able to be at the past meeting, but and I know that Shannon probably has some additional information to this, but basically what we've done since the past meeting is worked on a statement that would be posted on Metro's Human Resources website and would also be incorporated in the Office of Family Safety's mandated domestic violence training to ensure that employees had an understanding of where to go with these concerns when they arise. And that statement is something that I believe that Shannon will be providing to this committee to look over. And then, additionally, that having that statement within our training also helps because we're certainly talking about domestic violence in our mandated training, but of course it has intersections with all interpersonal crimes, including sexual assault and harassment. It's a great time to kind of open the dialogue and the understanding with Metro employees about what our role can be and what Metro Human Resources role can be in those situations. And the idea around the statement is that employees can go to either entity for guidance. And then, for example, if they were to come to the Office of Family Safety for guidance and support, we could always loop in Human Resources if they choose to do that. And the same could go for Human Resources as well, in particular when there are needs for support, such as an order of protection, when there's need for assistance with any kind of reporting that they'd like some help with advocacy around that we can kind of operate in that way where we're both safety netting each other. So it's a kind of warm handoff is how we would look at that between the two entities. And they could approach either entity and get, kind of looped in to the other if they choose to do that. Just another thing that Diane wanted to make sure that I mentioned is that our space is often kind of a soft place to start in the process. And it can look like that for individuals who've experienced all, forms of interpersonal crime if they're not ready, for example, to take the step of reporting to their HR or to central HR, if they're not ready to, for example, make a police report, if they, have concerns even about going into counseling and therapy. Oftentimes the family justice centers and the advocacy support can be kind of a soft start in that process to let them know all of their options and to let them decide their path. That's really the role that we play is as an empowerment role to say what feels best to you, what do you think meets your needs, and how can we help guide you through that? So that's the information that I have for this meeting. And of course, the other reminder is that all of our services are free and confidential. We also have an anonymizer system for anyone who comes in that does not want their name in our system. So we're able to do that as well, which provides an extra layer of feeling of confidentiality. Because we are a metro entity, it can feel like information could be shared, which it of course is not. But it at least provides an extra layer of a feeling of confidentiality to be able to provide that anonymizer for anyone who seeks our services as well.
Great, that's very helpful. Are there questions or comments from the members? I don't see any WebEx hands raised, but welcome to indicate if you want to speak. Or I see Councilmember Stiles. I see your real hand up. That counts too. You're recognized.
It's easier than looking for this icon.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Becky. I was just wondering, has it been implemented, this new policy already, or is this something that's still in discussion?
So there are a couple of parts of what we've talked about that is already in existence because of the domestic violence policy. The statement to be issued by Metro Human Resources on their website and incorporated within our domestic violence training has not been implemented yet. But I believe they were, from my information, would like to present that statement to this body for its approval and input. And I think Shannon could probably speak more to that because I think she has that statement, whereas I do not have that statement available.
Just for clarification, did you say there are some other changes that have been implemented?
We do have some of the things that I spoke of. We do have that are just in our current operations, such as the anonymizer is something that we made sure was in place when the Metro domestic violence policy was implemented. So that is something that we have had in place over the last year and a half to ensure that individuals who felt like they did not want their information in our system because it's a Metro system to have that extra layer of confidentiality. So that is certainly there. Anyone who were to come to us with any concern about sexual assault and sexual harassment would already be receiving the services in the way that I kind of described, the warm handoff connection with any kind of resources that they would like, with potential reporting options, whether that's to their HR or to the Metro Police. So all of those things exist already just in our current model, but the specific statement that I think that was more of the focus from this council is to, really make it clear where people can go. And that is the thing that's still, I believe, out for approval.
Great. Other questions or comments? Raise your WebEx hand or your real hand, or just, we're not an unruly group. You're welcome to start speaking if you have any other questions. Great. Well, we appreciate all the work that the Office of Family Safety does, and we appreciate the fact that y'all have been so willing to listen to us and to allow us to pass concerns through to y'all when we know you're working hard from the get-go. If there are no further questions, then I will invite you you're welcome to stay and listen to other important business, or go about your way if you want to. I'll check one more time to make sure there aren't any other questions from the group, and I'll touch base with Director Hall about the statement, and we'll circulate that to the group, and then send comments on that both to her and to you and to Diane Lance. Any comments on that plan of action?
Chairwoman Allen.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I like Councilwoman Stiles. I feel like we're in a different form of WebEx where I cannot find the raise hand function myself either. So I apologize for the tardiness of my question. Thank you so much, Ms. Bullard. We appreciate you and your office as well. I think, as you know, part of why we initiated this conversation was the feedback that we were getting, that there were, you know, in kind of a counterintuitive way, like so many paths to submit, that there was some confusion about kind of the best path and what that would mean. Was it anonymous and so forth? And so while I appreciate, you know, the engagement with Ms. Hall, you know, we also have kind of the MNPD piece of things. And so I just wonder, sometimes it appears that kind of in their process operates somewhat in a separate sphere. And I think sometimes we kind of go back and say, oh, well, Metro HR is, you know, over all of that. But do you anticipate, and this is maybe somewhat for you, but also kind of for Chair Allen and just the committee as we think about next steps, while we will appreciate hearing from Ms. Hall, kind of subsequent to all this, what is sort of kind of the final action or reporting back out if we think of, okay, hypothetically, a whole myriad of women who work in Metro government, whether they be, you know, in any particular department or with MNPD, somewhat of just a kind of a, not necessarily a reset, but just a way to communicate that this has been thought about with some intentionality. Here are all the paths. There is an anonymizer. There is like, so I understand there will be a statement on HR's website, but then would that be, you all sort of act as the hub, but I guess I'm just wondering about kind of the next step, maybe from a communication standpoint, to kind of share the work back out to the Metro women who will benefit from the coordination. Thank you.
Good questions. And Ms. Bullard, is there anything you could respond to that with based on your understanding of how this is expected to move forward? I guess the question is, again, what we continue to come up with is how, what are the ways we make sure that all the women know? And, do we stick signs on the back of the, the bathroom doors in all the women's bathrooms, or, what's the best way to communicate that message so that, and certainly having a website is a tool that wasn't available 10 years ago that reaches a lot of people if they're looking for it. Are there other things that we can think of that would maybe reach people that aren't looking on the website?
I think that's a great thing for us to consider, is how we're really spreading and disseminating the information in a way that doesn't feel so inaccessible. I think sometimes when we, for example, talk about interpersonal crimes or violence and abuse, there can be a tendency for people to leave out crimes of harassment and crimes that may be more verbal. And so that can feel like, well, this might not be the avenue for me or the space for me. So I think we can be really intentional in some messaging and think through that with, it looks like Director Hall is actually on the call now, about how we can message that to Metro employees to make sure that it's not only accessible in terms of the places that you can go, but also in the identification of the harm itself, and making sure that
right,
people understand, what we mean when we talk about sexual harassment and sexual abuse, that those things have a whole spectrum of ways that they're perpetrated, and of, ways that we can help and be supportive. So I think that's a really wonderful point, Councilwoman, how we can address that and look at how we frame it and frame our outreach.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Director Hall, we are so glad you could make it, and I apologize for not getting the link to you earlier. I hope you haven't been frantically looking for it. So we've gotten a great update from Ms. Bullard about the Office of Family Safety and the statement that y'all are working on together. So I'd love to give you the floor to add further comments to that.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen, and my apologies. I think when I put this on my calendar, I don't know, 2 months ago, maybe when you had reached out, I put 5:30. And so when I confirmed with you, I'm like, I've got this on my calendar for 5:30. So in my head, I had a mental block. So please accept my apologies to all the members here. So I think Ms. Bullard probably covered part of this, but I will say our offices worked very easily together on that statement. We feel really good about putting that in a really accessible way. And I think to Ms. Bullard's point, I think there are opportunities to message that further than just the website, right? And I'm already thinking of some opportunities that I'd like to talk through with the Office of Family Safety, but we do have common areas where we have to put all kinds of requisite information, sometimes federal and state driven, mostly federal, but it feels like having something that catches your eye does two things. And I think speaking in a way clearly that's consistent with our messaging on the website, I think could serve two things. One, we're going to normalize that this is the appropriate behavior in public spaces, right? The one thing about, because we don't have great places, even in some of our nicer, more updated bathrooms throughout metro facilities, there's not really a place to house information like that for women to see. So I don't want it to get stripped down. I want it to have some longevity and legs. But even having some really nice kind of poster board components that are part of the requisite posting in common areas throughout our departments, I think tells women, like, we're not scared to say we're here for you. And I also think it sends a message to those who may be treading a little too close to the line of where they should be. And I'd rather us have a pretty open commitment for everyone to see, and women feeling confident that this is not something that we will obviously treat anybody who's been affected by any harassment, whether it's inside or outside the workplace, any criminal behavior inside and outside the workplace, with the utmost regard. But I like this idea that we are kind of publicly sharing, and we've already got infrastructure for departments to do that. So that's kind of the vein I'm thinking, and I think it's a really good point, Councilmember Allen and others, that you're raising, maybe these additional, more public communications in a way that's got some longevity. And it sends a message to everybody. We've established a culture in this department. We're not scared to talk about it. And it sends a message to those that maybe are treading more lightly or haven't thought about I think most of the time, people justify crazy things all the time. Believe me, I see it in HR. I think it also may wake up some of those possible offenders to their own actions, right? Oh, I hadn't thought about the fact that maybe making this action or this statement could be offensive to others. So I don't know what you think about that, but I would love to take that offline with Office of Family Safety. And I think there's a really easy way for that additional communication to pivot and have some longevity and legs in public ways.
Great, I appreciate that. I think that's a really good point. I would throw out calendars, because there have certainly been some calendars I've seen on people's desks that I think I wish they knew that this was disturbing. So if we can make that public knowledge, I think that would be a great advancement. So I appreciate that suggestion. Any other comments or questions? And again, I'm not seeing the WebEx. Oh, Councilmember Stiles seems to have found it. Is that a new request to speak, Councilmember Stiles?
Yes, it is, Chair. Thank you. I'm very proud I found it. So my question is for Ms. Hall. There was a question right before you joined the call in regards to how do we communicate across departments. I hear us talking about getting the word out. It seems in bathrooms and via email. But is there a concrete way and a commitment that this new policy is the metro standard? So while there may be 17 ways that you could report an incident, this is the way, if you're using metro system, this is what we're suggesting? Or are we still saying, hey, there are 17 ways, take your choice, without making clear how the Metro way is different?
So as we talked about before, we cannot limit the ways, nor do I believe we should limit the ways that employees have to report any kind of violence or harassment that happens in the workplace. We legally can't, and I don't fundamentally think that we shouldn't, because I think this does impact victims differently at different times, and I want to meet them where they need to be met. That being said, our public statement on our website, I think on the communications, the way that we're going to do this is encourage the Metro standard, to your point, Councilmember Stiles. We're going to encourage this suggested Metro process. And actually, Diane and I were just talking about this recently. I think there's a couple of opportunities in addition. I don't know. I'm so sorry I joined late. I didn't know what Ms. Bullard had already covered. We obviously have sexual harassment prevention training for supervisors and for employees. We have two different components. We talked about adjusting part of that language to be really clear, consistent with the messaging that we've presented to you on the website. We want you to know this is a place to come. Diane has also indicated on her end that the kinds of training and communication they do will be consistent, and they could amend and dovetail their communication to make that really clear. So what we're going to do, again, we can't legally limit where they can disclose and when they decide to do it. But we are going to strongly encourage with consistent messaging through both of our offices' trainings, the two out of my office, the training that comes out of Office of Family Safety, the messaging on the website, right? So I think when we're reading for it, and then hopefully in some of these public spaces, I think that language should also be there, right? You shouldn't have to go dig on a website if you feel like you need to find something and find a way to disclose a process. And I think we have such a great relationship with Office of Family Safety. I think there is also a shared commitment. We feel very confident. We were already organically doing this, but normalizing a process between our offices so that if an employee comes to us and it feels like it is maybe beyond the workplace and has gone into criminal territory, we're going to handhold and encourage and physically go with that person to Office of Family Safety and help them get there. And then I heard the same commitment from the Office of Family Safety. If they come and say, I had this incident, it happened at work, it feels more workplace and not really crossing in, but there could be some auxiliary services offered out of Office of Family Safety. They'll outline the auxiliary services and they'll carefully bring that component over to us so that we can talk through what their options would be. Because I don't want to force, Diane's is really different than mine. Diane's has some confidentiality. Mine does too, but once we trigger an investigation, at some point that's going to become public record, right? At the end of the process. But I think there's really a shared commitment updating all of our trainings for consistent messaging on the Metro preferred process, and then a commitment between our offices to handle it that way.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. And are there any other questions?
Yes, Chair.
Councilmember Stiles.
So, for example, so we know how we ended, the impetus for this conversation was in regards to the allegations that were taking place within MNPD. And there was a lot of back and forth in terms of some people feeling uncomfortable to come forward about their stories, or some people had and felt like the investigations hadn't gone well. With this new process in place, with the ability to be anonymous, could those individuals now come forward and utilize this system and begin an investigation that way?
So the short answer is yes. As I will speak at least on my side. Harassment in the workplace, whether you're a current or former employee, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to know about it. Now, I will say that the EEO does put legal standards and timeframes in place. it doesn't mean that we are bound by those. We can do something greater. When I think about the allegations, again, a lot of the allegations were fairly vague. There were a couple of specifics here and there when I read through the volumes of information that were submitted by Silent No Longer, Tennessee. And we worked with Ms. McLean actually repeatedly through our office and made that plea because we realized people weren't ready to come and talk to us yet. So we said, would you please share this communication with anyone that has contacted you, a current or former employee, and tell them they can come and talk to us confidentially about whatever process it is. If it was going to trigger something that was going to be criminal in nature and crossed a line, we would carefully get them over to Diane. If it was something workforce, even if they were a former employee, if they wanted us to investigate it, we absolutely would. The one that I saw enough specific information about in the allegations that I could identify, we did do an investigation on. To be clear, the investigation we did, we sort of begged the employee to come to us once we found out that there may be some harassment that happened. We finally got her comfortable enough and encouraged her to bring her attorney because that was something that was trusted for her. So she and her attorney came to the office and we did do an investigation. I will note what she claimed with her attorney and what we investigated is significantly different than what was in the information that Ms. McLean disclosed. Now that's what she was able to share, so I couldn't hear it, but we did do an investigation from somebody who is one of the parties, at least best I could figure. I think the police department struggled to, but knew a couple of cases within that. The answer is yes, but I also want to talk about like, I can't necessarily reconcile when, and I believe the person that came through the door with her attorney, because we literally had multiple conversations with she and her attorney through the legal department saying, please come trust us. And she felt comfortable coming forward finally after months of HR asking without knowing what was happening, but knowing that she felt bothered by it.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Good to have that history. Other questions or comments? We do have a cutoff at 6 for several members, so if there are no further comments, I feel like this has been a good discussion and I'm encouraged to know
Chair,
that changes have been made.
Councilmember Henderson's hand is up.
Council members, real.
Carolyn, I apologize. I did find the button and I had it up before you were
Sorry.
starting to make conclusionary remarks. I apologize. This is a quick question to Ms. Hall. Ms. Hall, you and I had spoken in the past about some employee concerns when folks had reached out to me, particular to a certain department, and they did not have a comfort level with the HR representative in that department because they felt that that person was friendly with the person that was harassing them. And, you know, we talked at that time about just kind of Metro employees' understanding of this sort of, you know, the path to take, and also, you know, kind of from that anonymous standpoint and understanding, you know, your office as kind of Metro HR and that umbrella. And so, you know, I think what I want to make sure as well, you know, kind of training the trainers kind of things that, you know, and sort of normalizing that, you know, if you're not comfortable reporting something internal to your department, that's not to impugn any particular person. I mean, sometimes there's just maybe a perception that, you know, maybe I'm a woman, the HR director's a man. I've seen that same man chatting friendly with the person who's harassing me. So am I going to go to that man and say, I'm being harassed? No, I am not. So I think kind of understanding too what kind of, you know, the process and how Metro HR relates to kind of HR internal to some of our larger departments, and that representative And again, that's just part of kind of understanding the pathways and people having more than one pathway, which I concur with you is a good thing. But I think sort of, recognizing that and acknowledging that if a employee doesn't follow what one might think is the traditional path of, well, why didn't, you tell your HR director in your department that's not intended as a disparagement or whatever, it's just really what this person's comfort level is. So I think, again, in the training aspect, sort of normalizing, picking the path that is most comfortable to that person, but also Metro HR recognizing that for, any particular reason, just due to kind of history and interpersonal stuff, that, somebody that's working internal to a department sort of investigating something that happens in that department, and also understanding, well, what then if this person that's in HR in my department is not a trusted individual by me to share this, and then I then choose to go to your office, Ms. Hall, and work with somebody separately there, what's going to happen in reverse on that communication? Is that going to come back around to me in any particular way? Because so I think the employee understanding the path kind of up the path, but also what happens back down the path to that department, I think is important just from an understanding. And I don't doubt, once they arrive at your department and engage one of your employees, that to your point, everybody's going to be caring and helpful. But I think sometimes the trepidation in sharing harassment is, just thinking through all the, like, where might this go? And if this person tells this person, and what will that mean for me? And as we've all shared previously, that makes it take some time for folks to report things. So I would just ask, and you don't necessarily have to speak on this today, but if you could share with us or express whether you have kind of thought through, again, sort of the confusion sometimes about, somebody who is the HR person in a department, they answer to the director of their department, not necessarily to you, Ms. Hall. And then so what that sort of means from a communication around harassment standpoint, please.
Absolutely. So completely agree with everything that you said. Completely agree that that's an avenue. I will tell you, it's not an avenue most employees choose. I mean that as no disrespect to our HR department partners. Most are not equipped to deal with harassment in the workplace, especially of a sexual nature. But most harassment in the workplace, most department HRs are relieved that we tap and take over. Most employees, I think, and even putting myself in situations, I bet you many of us, I have said for years that I think every woman has their own timeline of events where they've been touched, and some are worse than others, and some have more frequent touches that were not appropriate, whether it was a verbal comment or something much more severe. Even putting myself in that same shoe, I'm not sure that if I was harassed in the workplace, I'd want to disclose to my department. I would want to go to a central HR. That is what most employees do today. That is what we are going to be encouraging in all of these communications across all these channels. And so I really do think it's the best path. Our team is trained to deal with this. We on the front end help employees understand that process. And just so that you guys are aware, typically at the end of any investigation, whether it is harassment or something that's non-EEO, those formalized reports are there and then quietly submitted from our office. And I am happy to meet with any department head. I sit down with the department head and we review those before they become final issued statements. Part of the importance there is to make sure that if there is something substantiated, that we are offering clear advice about next steps with regard to discipline, right? And I think that's a really important component to this. So typically, just so you guys know, it's pretty clear. I'm going to go directly department head to department head. So we're not, even if it starts with a department and they say, we've had this happen, we are in over our head. We've had that happen. We tackle it. We say, great, no problem. Give us what you have. We're going to take over. Thank you. And we'll keep your department leadership, like at the conclusion, we will let them know what the outcome is. And then just so you know, once we finalize that document, we will formally issue it first to the complaining party, second to the department head. If warranted, the alleged perpetrator would also get a copy, but we don't, and it does become public record. However, most people do not ask for it. We will maintain it. I wish the state law were different. But just so you guys know, the path is we are addressing this directly with the department head, and depending on the circumstances, I will sit down and meet directly with the department head. I certainly make the offer every time because we take these so seriously. Obviously, we've had a pretty major one. It wasn't harassment necessarily, but I think you guys have seen that with significant integrity and thoroughness that we are not scared to tackle big issues all the way up to top leadership in this government, which unfortunately we had to do in the past 6 months. Now, that person ended up losing their job. And so there are consequences to that, and that went to that person's appointing authority, which in this case was a board, right? They responded to a board, like some of our departments do. So that's the path. But I do, just so you know, most people come to Central HR, they bypass their department, even though that is an avenue available to them. And for good reason. I don't think that's a ding against the department. Most departments are not equipped to deal with investigations to begin with. And even when you had somebody strong, I would say that at the department in question, which was the health department, their HR manager is one of the strongest investigators who used to work for my department at Metro. He still knew it was the best practice to take himself out of that equation. So again, most departments aren't equipped, or they have good judgment to stay out of the way, and we do not interact with HR during an investigation, unless we have to, and they're people we call as witnesses, which was the case for, unfortunately, the last health department director. We did call their HR manager because he was one of the witnesses and substantiated part of what we found.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great discussion. And I think it's a complex issue, and I appreciate the very nuanced solution that we continue to work on. So real quickly, before any other hands go up, because I think we could discuss this, for several hours, given the opportunity. We certainly do want to keep the possibility for further discussion open, and I'm sure that that both Diane Lance and Becky Bullard and Director Hall, are willing to engage in further conversation if we have other questions. And we were told that statement would be supplied to us for our review, Director Hall. So we will be looking forward to that, and we'll pass it on to the rest of the caucus when you're prepared to share that.
I'm sorry, I shared it back 6 to 8 weeks ago. I thought the caucus would have seen it. I was actually, I guess, internally laughing on, I thought they really liked it.
Okay.
So I can, who would you like me to email it to so that it can get to the caucus? Diane and I, I didn't want to overstep my bounds, since this was this was a request by you, but a shared commitment by all of us. So we have not posted on the website because we've been waiting on this meeting. I'm so sorry.
It is very possible that you're talking to the bottleneck right here. So I would request that you send it to me, to Rosie, and to the Vice Chair Stiles, and we will ensure that it gets quickly out to the rest of the committee, and we'll get our comments back to you within the next 2 weeks.
Consider it done. Thank you.
Apologize for the holdup. So thank you for your work on that. All right. So I'm going to write that into the minutes right now to make sure that we will happen. Okay. Great. All right. We'll resend. All right. Statement. All right. And caucus members will comment in next 2 weeks by mid-May. All right, that's great. That's an action item. Any other comments on this topic? Great discussion. If not, I will thank our guests very much for taking the time to speak with us, and invite you to stay or log out as is appropriate. I will also note that we do have a quorum at this point, so if we can very quickly approve the minutes as corrected, then we'll get that vote passed before people have to move on to other meetings. So are there any other questions about the minutes from the people that joined us a little bit later? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, voting in the affirmative is Allen, Van Rees, Stiles, Henderson, Bircher, Gamble, Hauser, Toombs, Sepulveda, Hancock, and Hall. Thank you for your vote on that. Next up on the agenda is next month's meeting. We will have Sarah Beth Myers and several other members from Awake who will speak to us about the work that they're doing on families and children. Very quickly, if we can, in the next 7 minutes, go over the last two things on the bylaws that we had to deal with immediately, which were our statement of purpose, our mission, vision, and the treasurer's role. I'm going to call that document up. All right. And then I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's find the document. Okay, does everybody see that? So we'll start with the mission and the vision, and I will thank Councilmember Stiles and Henderson for working on this, and turn it over to you two to walk us through it in 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So basically, we just tweaked the mission to make it a little bit more succinct. And where we previously had 2 sections to the mission, we now have a mission and a vision. So I think we have finally come to our final draft. So if everyone could read this over and give your thoughts and opinions, and we can tweak what we need to, but this is our final iteration.
Great. So I'm going to just read through them real quick. The mission of the Women's Caucus of the Metro Council is to ensure that issues affecting women, children, and families within Nashville are advanced through public policy and public awareness. And our vision, to achieve this objective, the caucus will create and support policies that respond to and serve the needs of women. The caucus will provide opportunities for education, collaboration, and empowerment. We will always seek to protect the safety and security of all women. Any comments or questions? And I cannot see anyone's hands at this point, so.
I do see a small typo.
Tell me where
The second reference to caucus in vision, the second sentence, we've capitalized it in the first sentence, but we didn't capitalize it in the second sentence.
Let's be consistent. Okay. Great. If we're down to that kind of thing, we're making progress. Anything else? Okay. Hearing none others, I would suggest that we also talk about the treasurers, and then if the body is okay, we'll vote on these changes to the bylaws as a group. Is that an okay process? And so we have, okay, great. We currently do not have any job description for the treasurer. And suggestions were made simply to say, at this point, since we haven't decided whether to do dues or not, and so far doing fine without them, under the description of the treasurer, we'd say any expenditures must be discussed with the chair and caucus prior to execution, and that the treasurer and chair shall be the only signers on the bank account. Anything else we should add to those two, or any other statements that should be added?
Chair, I have a question.
Yes, you're right.
So I know we talked about having dues, and as this is our last electronic meeting, I know that you had shared in the past when we get together, there's usually food and beverages. So so if we're going to be meeting for next month, I just wanted to suggest that perhaps we should figure out what dues are, and then maybe we could collect those and begin to take care of those items moving forward. And then also, if we're looking to pay for that, I know we also talked about wanting to do programming. So whatever we determine for a dues, maybe some of that goes to food and some of it goes to programming, whatever that may be.
Okay, good suggestion. I would say that is a longer discussion than we have time for.
Yes, but I want to put it out there.
And so I will make a note to add that to next month's agenda, and we will figure on next month's being a very simple meeting, but we do need to talk about that as well. So if we.
Chair, I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand.
Councilmember
I'm-
Harris, you're right.
Could you tell me again, what's the date on the May meeting? And do we anticipate needing to discuss items concerning the budget at that May meeting?
Good question. The date of the May meeting is May 25th. And it is very possible we will need to discuss. I'm going to go to meeting minutes. Okay. 5.
Just wondering, once we have the budget and the substitute budget, there may or may not be items in it that the caucus wants to discuss as a whole, but I no one knows that yet, but I just wanted to make sure that we remembered that May and June are weird.
Yeah, no, I think that's
in general.
Excellent point. Well, let's figure on allowing the largest chunk of time for awake and budget discussions, but to allow at least more time than the 2 minutes that we have remaining to talk about the treasurers. My suggestion would be to carry this statement about treasurers forward and to vote today on the mission and the vision statement, if that seems appropriate. And we'll get that part settled and work on the treasurer part at the next meeting when our treasurer is present. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Great. Any further discussion on that? Shout out. I can't see anybody's hands at this point. Being
No
unaware
hands,
of any of
Chair.
Huh? Speak out.
There
Who
are
is
no
that? You're up
hands.
next. There are no hands. Thank you. Okay, so let's vote then on the mission and the vision statement as they have been presented here. All those in favor of the proposed mission and vision statement being adopted into bylaws, say aye.
Aye.
That's one.
I
There you go. Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see who's left. Okay, so voting in the affirmative was Allen, Hauser, Stiles, Henderson, Van Rees, Bircher, Toombs, Sepulveda, and Hancock. And there were no no's. Any corrections to that? Okay, seeing none. All right, statement of purpose was accepted unanimously. Unanimously. Treasurer's role. We continue to be discussed. Okay. Any old business before the group? Very quickly, thanks to Angie Henderson on the math awareness resolution. I thought it was great. And I would love to perhaps get additional copies of that with signatures and present that to those people. Can Councilmember Henderson, can you and I take on the responsibility of making that happen?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. Also, again, thank you to Council Lady Gamble and Porterfield, and I apologize if I'm forgetting somebody else, but and to you for your outreach to particular universities. And so I would just ask colleagues, not necessarily having the mailing addresses of the women who were mentioned, the current women particularly. I know obviously offices have, like Councilor Allen, you reached out to 2 individuals that I think are government relations, like we know that, but I think Councilor Gamble and Councilor Porterfield reached out to individual professors more directly, which I appreciate, but I will need, I guess, some assistance on how to get them that copy, and maybe if we all just want to have kind of a mutual cover letter or something to thank them or something. So
Gotcha. Okay, I will make that we need them to help us out. Contact.
yeah,
Great.
I don't know if that's something that Rosie can kind of help us with.
Yeah, I think she has had to drop off to cover a community meeting. Oh, there she is. I think she's doing 2 meetings at once, so maybe she will hear that we have volunteered her for something. So we'll ask for her assistance. Rosie, to help. Okay, any suggestions for May resolutions? We have a short amount of time to think about that, so I will, Councilmember Porterfield had actually done a good job of looking at every month, so I'll check with her. Alicia. Okay, on that one. Okay, upcoming hot topics are the budget, Oracle, anything else? Is there anything anybody wants to say about those two hot topics in the -2 minutes that we have left? I know that the IDB had a robust 4-hour discussion on the Oracle resolution, but ultimately passed it, but has raised good awareness about the importance of just ensuring that as we work on economic development, we just consider all the impacts on all of Nashville, the Nashville community. Any other comments on that?
As I understand it, there's 25 co-sponsors for the resolution as of today.
Good to know. I think it's incumbent on us to work hard to communicate both directions with our constituents on why 25 of us are willing to support it, but also to acknowledge that we hear their concerns and that we will continue to do our best to ensure that they're addressed. Councilmember Stiles, I see your hand up and I don't know when it went up. Is this topic you want to speak on?
Yes, I actually wanted to make a statement, Chair, regarding the budget. So thank you very much, Councilmember Mayor, reminding us for next month's meeting. But if there are any things that have crossed our minds, or maybe we should think about as it pertains to women and family and the budget, that we come to the table so we could discuss those things for suggestions.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, you know, once the mayor's budget is issued, I mean, we certainly have the council process to change it, but there's also power in communicating with the mayor's office now as it's being finalized. So if somebody's got a burning issue, today is better than next week. Earlier in the month would have been even better, but good point on that.
Well, if I can ask you, Chair, just to put a call in to Mike or to the mayor's office to say, as the chair of the Women's Caucus, we would like to know what the mayor's office is specifically doing on behalf of women in Davidson County, and let them tell us.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll be in part of the speech Thursday, but I think that if you ask them for that, then they'll have to go find it and answer you.
Okay, good point. And that's the basis of a moral budget. So thank you for that suggestion. All right, I'm putting that into the minutes. Call mayor's office. Okay, will do. Tomorrow. Okay, key issues. We just continue to carry along the key issues that we have always had. We are dropping electronic meetings because that is officially over. I mean, there are some issues COVID related that I just guess we should all be thinking about. The vaccine rollout has now moved to walk-in appointments. Summer school had input from state legislators, and the entire reopening process just took a big lurch forward with today's announcements about ending capacity restrictions. So I mean, I think, you know, just with regard to protection of families and children, the more we can emphasize, we can all get back to normal, except we do need to keep wearing our mask until everybody's gotten a vaccine. I would welcome other thoughts on what else we need to be thinking about. Other comments on that?
Chair, I think around electronic meetings, my reason in bringing that up previously, while it was kind of framed in the context of COVID, was that I felt like as a former mom and attendee of public meetings and engagement and so forth, that like this, having these digital platforms and this path for engagement, I think is good for women and families, because it's often difficult to get childcare, to participate as a parent, especially of young children. And so I just, I know it's kind of like, oh, okay, check, COVID's over. We can't meet, we can't do digital meetings anymore. But I think there were some real benefits for women at this time for their public engagement. And so I kind of want us to keep that alive in some ways. Like, how can we, with the current constraints in Tennessee, retain some, platform for, phoning in and participating without, having to load your 2 kids in their car seats and drive downtown and park in the garage and haul them upstairs to, stand at the podium and say what you want to say. And I recognize you can send an email, but I think we all recognize on certain issues that might be one of 50 or 60 emails. And some people really do want to, speak their piece in person. So I would just ask that we continue to consider that. And it's online digital meetings, but it's also just, the engagement for women and folks in young families. So I would like to kind of keep that on our plate for thinking about if we could, please.
Okay, no, that's an excellent point. I put it back in the minutes, so thank you for raising that issue. And, and I think, when, just for informational meetings, I believe, I don't know that the governor's executive order today prohibits us from having meetings where nothing is voted on electronically. I mean, I think that they're kind of 2 different categories, and everybody's sort of discovered that there's some benefit to having this option of everyone being in their own home. So that's an excellent point.
Absolutely, and fair point. So sometimes it's not actually physically wanting to come and speak. It's just, I want to learn more about this, and it's hard to bring kids to an hour-long community meeting where I just want to even listen, the ability. And so I think for us as a council body, right, like we all have varying levels of Facebook Live feeds or not, or in person, or okay, well, now if I'm going to go back and I'm going to be at the library and the community center, like, am I putting my phone on a tripod so I can live feed it so people can participate? Yeah. And I think, it runs the gamut, our kind of facility and comfort with doing that. And so some of, I'm so proud of so many of our colleagues who are, doing the Facebook Live and doing all that. But I would really like to see the council office support us in growing our kind of capacity and ability to do that and start to normalize that. Because it's great for transparency and accountability, and it's also great for women and young families to, be able to stay at home and, baby can play and you're learning more about, whatever this, bill is or issue is. So,
good point. And I will say Rosie has been amazing. She has, attended, I think, meetings. Well, and she's double dutying right now on her phone and her computer. So it is certainly helpful to have council office support on that. So I think that's an important point to bring up.
Well, and if I can chime in, I'm sorry, I don't have a hand, so I keep interrupting. I mean, I have hands. I just it may be a conversation that we need to bring M&N and ITS in, so that we start asking them to broadcast community meetings when they're held at public facilities. Right. So when the libraries open back up, or whatever the timing is, whatever we need to do, what they need for that, something like that to happen, right. and what facilities, because I think that if there's a major community meeting coming up, then why wouldn't they be able to come and put up a camera and even at least record it and then put it up on the channel for us? So I think that whatever resources, of course, that they will ask for that to happen is another question, but that may or may not come from a council budget now or in the future.
That's a good question. Now's the time to think about it. Councilmember Hauser.
Yes, I want first to agree with Angie wholeheartedly on, I'm hoping that some of the things that we've developed during COVID, such as tools of having these sort of electronic meetings, we're able to incorporate forward, because it's not only the folks with young children, but the elderly. We have elderly folks that are very interested in a particular issue, but there's no way in heck that they're going to drive downtown after dark, stay there to 10 o'clock at night or whatever to say their piece. It's just not going to happen. So we we lose a very significant portion of our electorate when we don't make things easy. I had a question that I don't know where to put it in, so I'm just going to throw it out and, we'll do with it whatever we need to do with it. Years ago, when we had the Women's Economic Council, it was a Tennessee organization, and there was a lot of research that was done. Unfortunately, it was disbanded a few years ago when our governor changed. But up until that point, the research showed the impact on our communities of things such as discrimination and domestic violence. Because you may get somebody who is interested in your subject because that appeals to their emotion or their heart, but that's only a portion. When you hit people in their pocketbooks, you get those folks that are more cynical's eyes, attention on your issue. And one of the things that the Women's Economic Summit was able to do was to show what the impact was to communities, what the impact was to employers when domestic violence happened. And so they were able at that point in time to get some things passed and some attention brought, because even if folks weren't, that wasn't one of their causes, the fact that it was hitting their pocketbook and they could see how many millions were lost in Tennessee due to that. And so as we're moving forward, I think anytime we have an opportunity to interject, yes, this is a lousy thing to do. Yes, we should have protections. And if we don't, this is what it cost us. I think that might give us more power. So that's just my 2 cents I'm throwing out on that.
Great point. Great point. I'll figure out where to put that in the meeting. Any other key items we need to talk about? I'm gonna run back through action items. We are gonna look for Director Hall's statement and send that out to everyone for their comments in the next 2 weeks. Councilmember Henderson and I are gonna work with Councilmembers Porterfield and Gamble to get contact information for the honorees on the math awareness resolution and send that to them. And I'm going to call the mayor's office about how the budget is addressing women's issues ahead of time, one day. And let's see, I think that's any other action items we need to be reminded of. Seeing none, hold on, let me look at faces and hands. Okay. Last thing we need to discuss is that this is the end of our ability to meet electronically, according to the governor. And so we will be meeting again in person in May, which is actually kind of fun. If all 20 of us show up, we do not fit into a committee room. The last couple of meetings, it's been closer to a dozen or 15. So we can try to get the largest committee room reserved and hope that that's a problem. And if it is, then we'll look for a larger space. Or we can move into the chamber, but that's an awfully formal setting. So any thoughts on that?
Well, how'd you know? My hand wasn't even up.
Body language.
So, since we have not talked about dues, but I think it will be really great to celebrate that we're getting a chance to see each other, because I know those of us that wanted to get vaccinated were vaccinated, and we will be past our 2 weeks, our window. So it would be really nice to, celebrate and, have cupcakes and things like that. And so I know I'd like to bring something, but maybe we can coordinate with Rosie and each give, $10 or something like that. And maybe we can have food and enjoy one another for fellowship in person.
Make a potluck of it. All right, let's plan on that. Will, other comments on that? Councilmember Van Rees.
The last time I went to the courthouse to get my Christmas cards that I got last month. I got all my Christmas cards. I noticed that they had rearranged a lot of the open space in the council office. And I think that there may be an opportunity to actually use our offices as a place to meet. What a concept. Rosie can speak more about that, but the tables, some of the cubes have been removed. The tables is a little bit more open space. And so I think that we may be able to put up sort of a square round table that
Right.
would hold 20 people, 5 and 5, pretty easily actually in the council office. So
Right.
that might be a way to make that happen.
Gotcha, okay. All right, that's duly noted as well. That decision will be made and announced to you guys, so. Any other thoughts on our May meeting, being back together in person?
Well, I actually have a comment, Chair. I wanted to let you know, because you might not have seen it in your email. Ms. Hall sent the policy to be sent
Okay.
out to everyone already.
Okay, that's great. So that will get out to everyone today or first thing in the morning, and then we've got till mid-May, let's say May 15th, to comment on that. So, sorry that got held up probably and lost in my email. Any other
Or mine, I'll
comments?
take.
We'll share the blame. Golly. The only thing I have left on mine is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Great. We are adjourned. Thank you all for a good meeting. I always learn something from these, so I appreciate the discussion. Good group.
Thank you, Chair.
See you next week. Bye-bye.